To start drafting your basic bodice block, the first thing we'll be doing is to mark out our working space. And to do that, we'll be measuring 3 cm from the left hand side of our paper. That is measuring 3 cm away from the edge of your paper, up and down on the left hand side. You measure 3 cm, you connect it together with your long ruler. You connect it together with your long ruler. Then you measure another 3 cm down from the top. You measure 3 cm down from the top also. Just mark 2 points, then connect the 2 points together. You mark 2 points and you connect them together with your long ruler. Mark 2 points, connect them together with your long ruler. The point where both lines intersect, that's your point 0, which is always at the top left edge of the paper. Now the first thing, 0 to 1, back bodice length. That is your back bodice length that you have. Back point 1, square out point 1 with your set square towards the right hand side of your paper. Place your set square properly, then you square out point 1. That's the way I'm doing it here. Zero to 2. That is your bust measurement plus 6 divided by 2. Your bust measurement plus 6 divided by 2. Please take note, you would add 6 cm first to your bust before dividing it by 2. That's how you get 0.2. You mark it, and that's my 0.2. You square down 0.2 with your set square also. Square down 0.2 with your set square. The point where line 1 and line 2 intersect, that is 0.3. The point where line 1 and line 2. You divide 0.0 to 2 and 0.1 to 3 into 2. Divide line 0.0 to 2 and 0.1 to 3 into 2. So as to identify the center back area and the center front area. Connect them together with your ruler. Point 0 to 4 and 2 to 5. How to get 0.4 and 0.5? You take your bust measurement, you divide it by 4, you add 1.5 cm to it. So you measure from 0.0 to get 0.4 after doing the calculation. You'd mark it, that's on your left, that's 0.4. Then you get 0.5 from 0.2, which is on your right, and that's 0.5. You connect them together with the ruler. This line you've just established, that's your armhole depth line. Point 2 to 6, that is the neck width in the front. You take your neck circumference, you divide it by 5, then you subtract 1 cm from it. Neck circumference divided by 5 minus 1 cm. After doing the calculation, you measure from 0.2 inwards to get 0.6. Then you mark it. That's my 0.6. Then 0.2 to 0.7, that's the front neck depth. It is the neck circumference divided by 5. You're not subtracting, you're not adding. Just your neck circumference divided by 5. You mark 0.7 there. the back neck width 0.0 to 0.8. That's your neck circumference divided by 5 minus 0.5 cm. That's how you get 0.8. So you measure from 0.0 inwards the paper to get 0.8. Then you label, that's my 0.8. 0 to 9 is just 2 centimeter. Like it was explained during the measurement taken. It's just 2 cm down from 0.0 to get 0.9. 0.2 to 0.10 is the shoulder to bust point measurement. 2 to 10 is the shoulder to bust point measurement. You square in that 0.10. Well, it's written as square out, which is still correct. You square out 0.10. So you square out 0.10. That line 0.10, that is your bust line. That line on 0.10, that is your bust line. Point 10 to 0.11, your bust point to bust point measurement divided by 2. It is measured inwards. That's it. Then you mark your 0.11. That 0.11 is your bust point. 0.2 to 12, that's your back cross shoulder measurement divided by 2. You divide your back cross shoulder measurement by 2. Then you mark it, and that's your 0.12. Then you square down by 4 cm. You square down by 4 cm. Square down from 0.12 by just 4 cm. Connect it to 0.6. Connect with the broken line to 0.6. Connect that squared line down with the broken lines to 0.6. That's your shoulder slant first, your temporary shoulder slant. Then for the back, that's 0.0 to 0.13. Your back cross shoulder measurement is divided by 2. You get 0.13 by dividing your back cross shoulder measurements by 2. You locate as 0.13. You square down 0.13 by 3.5 centimeter. You square down 0.13 by 3.5 centimeter. And you connect back with broken lines to 0.8. You connect it back with broken lines to 0.8. Six to 14, you divide your shoulder length by 2. To get 0.14, it is measured on the slanted broken line. So you mark it, that's 0.14. 14 to 15, it's the same shoulder length divided by 2 minus 1 cm. You mark it, that's 0.15. You connect 0.14 and 0.15 to 0.11. That is the beginning of the creation of the shoulder dart. That's the front shoulder that we've just created. Now, 0.8 to 16 is the same measurement as 0.6 to 0.14. 16 to 17 is just 1.5 cm. That's the back dart width. It's more like a standard measurement. Then 0.18 is the midway between 0.16 and 17. You square down 0.18 by 8 cm to locate 0.19. Now you place your set square on the slanted broken line. So you square down 0.18 by 8 cm to locate 0.19. That's the ending point of the back shoulder darts. Connect back 0.16 and 17 to 0.19. Now we'll be completing the shoulder seam. Remember, we started it off by a temporary line, which is a broken line. So to do that, you would crease the dart line from 0.14 to 11. That is fold that first line. You can see the way I'm doing it. Place a finger on 0.11 and fold over that crease line onto the other line. And use your paper to just smoothen it out. After doing that, you take your short ruler. You place your short ruler on line 6 to 14 as a guide to establish your complete shoulder length. Place your short ruler on line 6 to 14 as a guide to establish your complete shoulder length. Afterwards, you use your tracing wheel on the folded area to get your dart head. The essence of doing this is so that when you sew your dart on the fabric, your seam line automatically aligns together. That's the essence of what we are doing on this shoulder. After doing that, you get your point 20. You do the same thing to the back too. You crease line point 16 to 19. Then you place a fingertip on point 19. When you crease, try to crease to the end of the paper. Then you place a fingertip on point 19. Fold it over. Fold that crease line over to point 17 to 19 line. The shaping at the back is very little. You know why? Because the dart width at the back is very small also. So you place your plastic ruler on the line 8 to 16 as a guide. You use that to extend your line to establish your shoulder seam length. Then use your tracing wheel on the folded area. On the back, it comes downwards a little bit away from point 18, away from point 17 to point line that was squared down. So that's it. We've established our shoulder dart for the front and for the back. So the next thing is point 2 to point 22. So you measure from point 2 to point 5, you divide it by 2, then you add 1 cm to it. Measure point 2 to point 5, divide it by 2, then you add 1 cm to it. After doing the calculation, you mark your point 22. That's my point 22. You square it out to the first leg of the dart. Use the set square, please. Always use the set square. So can you see? I've squared it out to the first leg of the dart. I stopped there. Then 22 to 23, you would measure it while that dart is closed again, which is your front cross armhole measurement divided by 2 plus 0.5 cm. So do the calculation. After doing the calculation, you would measure from point 22 using the squared out line as a guide to get point 23. So you would extend that line from point 22 with the measured calculation and you mark it. That's your point 23. That's point 23. You label it. 0 to 24 is the same measurement as point 2 to point 22. So get point 24. The same measurement from point 2 to 22 would give us point 0 to 24. You mark it, that's point 24. Now you square out point 24 also. Square out point 24. Point 24 to 25 is the back cross armhole measurement. You divide it by 2, then you would add 0.5 cm to it. Your back cross armhole measurement divided by 2 plus 0.5 cm. You mark your point 25. That's point 25. Point 26 is just that point, just label it. That point is called UAP, underarm point. Now, point 3 to point 27, it's the difference between your front bodice length and your back bodice length. Remember, the front bodice length is always longer than the back bodice length. So when you mark point 27, you connect point 27 back to point 1 with your long ruler. Connect point 27 back to point 1. So that is our new waistline. That line you just connected together, that is the new waistline. Now let's do the calculation for waist suppression. You remember when we started our draft, we've not used our waist measurement at all. So from line 1 to 27, that is where we have our waist line. So we need to take out excess in form of a dart so the bodice can fit properly to the body. So to do that, we'll be measuring from point 1 to point 27. We'll take note of that measurement. That's my own. I'll show you how to measure it now. So you just place your ruler or your measuring tape from point 1 on that new line and you measure whatever you get, you mark it, you write it down. Then you take your waist measurement, you divide it by 2. Then you write that down also. Then the difference between both of them, that's your total suppression. So total suppression means that is what you'll be taking out in form of your dart and your side seam shaping. So after you must have gotten your total suppression, you share it for your front dart, for your back dart, and for your side seam. So I've just given us a formula or a ratio you could use. You can share 40% to the front dart, you share 30% to the back dart, and you share the remaining 30% to the side seam. The reason why the front dart carries the highest ratio is because of the bust. Because of the bust. That is why the front dart carries the highest ratio. So follow these guides to also do your own waist suppression calculation. Now let's go back to our drafting. Square down from point 11 to the new waistline to locate point 28. Square down from point 11 to the new waistline to locate point 28. You see the way I placed my set square? I placed my set square on that line 10 to 11 to square down to get 28. So that's my point 28 now. So I'm going to be using my front dart suppression that I got, the front dart calculation from the suppression that I got. So you divide your front dart suppression into 2 first to get point 29. Then you connect it back to point 11. In the other half, you measure it towards the left. That's your point 30. You connect it back also to point 11. Then we'll move to the middle, which is the side seam shaping. That center line on the new waistline, that's where my point 31 is going to be located. So 31 to 32 is the side seam suppression divided by 2. You connect it back to point 26. Remember, you must have done the calculations before you even start doing this. Then the other half, you measure from 31 to 33 towards the left. You connect it back to 26 also. That's the side seam shaping. We're almost done. Now, point 4 to 34, which is for the back dart. You get the midway between point 4 to point 26. So you measure from point 4 to 26, you divide it by 2. The point where you mark, that's your point 34. That's 34. Now you square down point 34 to get point 35 on the new waistline. Square down point 34 to locate point 35 on the new waistline. Once you square that down, so that's point 35. 35 to 36 is half back dart suppression. You connect it back to 34. 35 to 37 is the other half. You connect it back to 34. So connect them back to 34. That's the back dart that has just been created. So you see, we've just created our front dart, our side seam shaping, and our back darts, all from the waist suppression calculation we just did. Now we want to draw the armhole. From point 26 on the front part, you measure 2 cm away, just the way I did in my own draft. Measure 2 cm away from point 26 on the front part. Now you have different curves. You have your French curve, your pattern master, or your armhole curve. Whichever one it is, depending on the measurement that you are using to draft, will determine which you are going to use. I used my French curve because I am drafting for a small size, yeah. So if you're doing for a big size, you might have probably used your pattern master, or you might have used your armhole curve. Now for the back, you're not measuring anything for the back. You're just drawing the curve. You're not measuring anything for the back. You're just drawing the curve all the way from 21, and it connects to 26 directly. So you see, my front curve looks a bit deeper compared to the back. Now let's draw the neckline. For the neckline, we'll be drawing for the front. We'll be using the outer part of your pattern master to connect point 6 to 7 together. Please be very careful of point 7. Make sure it is almost a straight point. You see the way I'm placing my pattern master? Can you see? It's almost straight, so that my center line on point 7 doesn't give me a V shape. It has to look flat. So you see that? That's the shape drawing of the front neck curve. And to draw the back neck curve, you use the inner part curve of the pattern master. Can you see the way I used it? You use that part also. I guess you also have to be conscious of that pattern master being straight so a bit. Yeah, so that's it. I've drawn my back neck curve, and that's it. So to complete the drafting of the basic bodies, you have to reshape your waist dart the same way we did on the shoulder dart. So you crease line points 11 to 29 all the way to the end of the paper. Then you fold it over to line point 11 to point 30. And you take your French curve. You see, I'm still creasing. Then you take your French curve. You blend those two lines together, because if you look at it, you see. You have to blend them together. Blend together with your French curve. Then use the tracing wheel on the folded area. The reason for doing this, as I said earlier when we were doing the shoulder dart shaping, is to help make the seam line align automatically after stitching the dart on the garment. It helps make the seam line align automatically after stitching the dart on the garment when making it. Then you do the same thing for the back. You crease line point 34 to point 36 and fold over to line point 34 to 37. See the way I'm folding it over? Smooth and clean. Then you use your French curve also to blend them together. Use the tracing wheel on the folded area to reshape your waist dart. Outline the tracing wheel line, so you know where you're cutting through when cutting the paper. You don't need to do it on the side seam, because that's the side seam shaping. Now let's label the bodies we just finished drafting. The right hand side is the center front. That's the side seam. That's the side seam for the back. And that's the center back. Well explanatory. And that's the bust point. And that's it. You're done drafting your basic bodice block. So I label it properly. Again, that's the front, and that's the back. And that's it. You're done drafting your basic bodice block. You cut out your bodies.